money by not managing storage
Storage
devices.
area networks. And
But you're going to pay for it in the networks and the redesign of the application, so I'm still struggling to find the right use case. I understand what you're saying, I see the potential here, I'm just trying to find trying to come up with a use case out there.
I really don't believe that you can make this a cost-effective solution when you consider the network cost of moving that giant X-ray back and forth to the cloud.
And to be processing. What if I want to do genome processing? Am I going to pipe this through my enterprise, every single genome, every single time I want to process it?
So
I understand the architecture, and I just think that certainly the X-ray part of healthcare storage, those are massive files.
they are.
And the cost of getting that data in and out of the cloud versus having that data in my own highly secure data center, whether it's mine or level 3 in my locked room. As an example, a couple of years ago, I did a proposal for a large valley company in which we compared a cloud-based implementation of an application we wanted to offer as a service versus a private data center. And the cloud had a much lower, Amazon had, or Rackspace had a much lower capital cost, and they had fewer needs in the cost curve. But when you started looking at large volumes of data and getting gigabit connections to the backbone, if you make capital investment dramatically cheaper to run your own server farm, whether you ran it as a virtualized internal cloud or not, you just paying for that data movement will kill you.
Let me make a possible architecture suggestion and ask a question. Is what makes this regulatorily compliant? The fact that it's running in my data center on my premise, or just the fact that it's running in a regulatory approved environment? It's the latter. So, just like you were saying, cost of moving the data back and forth, that kind of thing is expensive. But what if, for example, Amazon offered this as a service up in their cloud?
What if the network between the public cloud and the regulated zone was just one cable and switch away?
But then they would take responsibility for everything. Rackspace
Or Amazon, yeah.
They're not doing that.
Yes,
They're
they
not.
are.
Well, they are. So they're
But they will host your equipment as long as you own the data and the application. They will host your equipment.
If they have access to the equipment for any kind of support purposes, if they have any way to log into that equipment, you've broken the security.
No. The regulations do not prevent a service provider from logging into your environment. You just have to prove that you're doing it in a manner that's controlled and regulated. That's all. It doesn't forbid you from having a service provider log into your machine. You just have to be able to track it with a unique credential. You have to log it. You have to be able to make sure that you've given them the right privileges, those kinds of things. That's all.
And I'm actually asking a slightly different question, which is, so one option is that the customer still owns the hardware, puts it somewhere close and peers with Amazon or something like that. Another option I'm wondering is, what if Amazon actually ran that as a service? So Amazon's done a lot to PCI certify their whole stack, from the facilities all the way up to the hypervisor. And they offer PCI compliant credit card processing as a server as part of AWS. So does that make sense? Does it keep it regulatory compliant if basically Amazon's offering a encryption/tokenization service where X-ray goes in, token comes out, all that kind of stuff?
And I see that happening, Brent. I absolutely see that happening as competition heats up. I mean, Amazon has had the run of the field for years now, right? But that's changed. Dell is coming out. IBM has something. Hewlett-Packard is working on something. Microsoft is out there. Rackspace. Right. I mean, everybody is going to be opening up clouds very soon. Remember the .com madness?
Right. The reason I bring it up is simply that I think for everyone in this room, enabling regulatory compliant cloud computing is something of interest. And I'm curious as to, this is an architecture that ownership and where something's hosted, yes, depends on kind of how you want to do different things. But the interesting thing is that the regulatory rule doesn't preclude someone from actually
Using the
running
cloud.
this in the cloud.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
the point.
I won't question that. Well, I'll say is that thus far, Amazon has not stepped up to being auditable by.
Any auditor.
Oh no, they
Somebody
have.
outside.
They
But the
absolutely have.
PCI,
Well, they have not.
have you read the PCI that they're talking about? It's like this basic level 0, whatever, that basically says we have physical security and we screen the staff on site. It's very basic, naturally, because a lot of PCI depends on, it says stuff like, it should only be collected when it's needed for the purpose, should only be accessed just when it's needed exactly for the purpose you're right now doing, and should be deleted when you're done with the purpose. They don't know shit about that because they're infrastructure as a service.
Well, that's actually, so the interesting part with Amazon is that with everyone, is that they're very clear that there's a shared responsibility model.
Exactly.
Where everything, so in infrastructure as a service, you have the customer has no control over the physical
Right.
security. And so they're taking responsibility for that. They have certified up the stack up to the level of the hypervisor. And then everything above that, your VM, your OS, and everything above that is your responsibility.
Well, strictly speaking, you could think if they let you put a black box on their data center with your payment, whatever that trusted control zone is, and you have a hardware security module that kind of like fits, that explodes when you touch it kind of thing, you could run your own, and you're the only one who can log in and manage the thing. You could run a pretty trusted environment because you're the guy's admin, like it's still under your control. Somebody could walk out of the box, but then they have to like crypto break whatever crypto you have for the whatever.
So
Right.
I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in the exact level of certification, but what I've heard is that Amazon has certified the stack up to the level in the hypervisor where if you wanted to create a PCI certified payment system within EC2, and I'm not talking about their other payment system or something, you could actually do that in your EC2 instance because they've done everything up to the stack, and as long as you're managing the OS and all the keys and everything responsibly there, you could do that.
You have no control over the OS typically, no, at Amazon either.
No, you absolutely do.
Yeah.
Well, if you launch theirs, you don't. So probably that's.
Yeah,
what they
well, I didn't.
yeah, because
Yeah.
that's what people typically do. They click Windows and then Windows pops up.
Right.
So
I built my own image and then shipped it in.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to do that then.
Well, yeah,
You
and
can
or
do that.
the
It's just that I've not found any access to anybody in Amazon who would talk to me and document simple things like their backup standards. Now, admittedly, I'm a year or two out of date in terms of trying to do that. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about Amazon because there are alternatives who are willing to be more
Flexible.
aggressive and flexible
Right.
in setting it up.
And the market will evolve. We are at the beginning of an entire movement, David. It's just starting. It's like client server in 82, 83, whatever, right? I mean, it was interesting at that time, but no one was seriously thinking of using it until it had settled a little bit. And the cloud environment, in my personal opinion, at least from a cryptographic and a security point of view, is still settling. A lot of people are taking advantage of it, but they're not aware of the risks of putting sensitive data in the cloud today. Once somebody gets attacked, breached, and pays a fine, then everybody will get very sensitive.
I mean, we look at some pretty big names who are, including the FBI, who are getting breached.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So continuing on, you can do the same thing with private clouds. That was just an example. So here are some premises about RC3 security. Keys and sensitive data are never in the cloud. They are always in control zones because to the best of my knowledge, with what I know of cryptography over the last 12 years, I don't know of any way to protect the key inside the cloud. Once the key has gone into the cloud, you have lost control. And I have yet to see someone claim that it's possible to protect the key inside the cloud. When someone describes it to me, and you go through the risk analysis and the attack vectors, then it may be possible to arrive at a conclusion, but so far I have not seen anything yet. And Amazon, they are offering server-side encryption, but they are not willing to tell you how they do their key management. And most importantly, the analogy I keep telling people who depend on Amazon's server-side encryption is, they're like a bank. You give your money to the bank, but do you give them signature authority over your money? You don't. You retain signature control of your account and your money. The keys are your signature. You can